Ladies and gentlemen, it's another episode of Pastors of Pain. I'm Father Brian O'Brien, pastor of St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I'm joined by my co-host, my friend, almost out of school, Father Kerry Wakulich of St. John Catholic Student Center.
Yay, bacon! Bacon, it's applauding itself.
We are the two Catholic priests here in good old Stillwater, Oklahoma.
We are.
And it's Lent, and it's a blessed time. The season of Lent is really flying by.
Wonderful
Easter
time.
just a couple weeks away. Holy Week coming up. We hope you're gearing up, and we hope all those dates are on your calendar.
Oh, yes.
Not just Sunday Mass, but Holy Thursday and Good Friday and the Easter Vigil on Saturday night, April 20th. The Chrism Mass. We'll talk. Well, maybe we'll talk about that more. Maybe next week we could dive into Holy Week and really break it open.
That sounded like a beer opening.
We'll break that open. So that's what we'll do. That's what we'll do next week. Remind me. Remind you of what? That for next week.
About what next week?
That we'll talk about Holy Week.
Oh, okay. Is that happening next week?
Write that down.
Okay.
I don't want to forget it.
Let's see. Holy
You're gonna remind
Week.
Me. Yeah.
Okay.
Usually it's the other way around in our relationship, by the way, here, folks.
Yeah.
But you have a pen and paper in front of you.
I do.
So there we go.
Okay.
One of the things that oftentimes a lot of people don't see, so you're a Catholic and you come to church all the time. There are things that happen in the church that a lot of people don't see.
Okay, let me guess. Can I guess?
Oh, okay.
The geothermal system.
Well, yes, that. It's buried under the ground.
Okay.
Do you have geothermal at St. John's?
No.
Are you going to?
It was built in 1962.
Okay, I don't know.
Who had
This is Stillwater. We're very advanced, very progressive.
Yeah, it is a college town.
Okay. Now what else? What else happens? Like things that happen a lot in the Catholic Church, but people don't.
Ooh, let me guess. Sunburns from the clear windows in the church.
No.
Okay.
But there are. I mean, it is hilarious.
Okay. Let me guess. Third one.
I just want to let me finish this point. That there are people at St. Francis Xavier. Because if you've ever been, we have this beautiful church and we have clear windos.
Yeah,
we don't have.
Love it.
We don't have. Do?
I love clear windows. Don't take it away.
Don't do that.
Just kidding.
It is nice, but we are going to do stained glass windows. But there are people who, on like a clear sunny day, they wear sunglasses during Mass.
Really?
And I don't blame them. I mean, I'm not mad at them. It's just funny to I'm preaching, and when I preach, I make a lot of eye contact, and and then you're looking at someone, and it's 10 in the morning, and they
got blue blockers on.
They got shades.
The future's looking bright for them. I mean, whoa! You didn't let me get. I got a third guess. Third guess.
Ready?
Things that are going on
that a lot of people, your average parishioner, doesn't see happening.
The plumbing.
That. Yes.
The movement of waste water through the building. That's
because it's all underground.
Okay, well, those are three
what
valid
I was
things.
Thinking of, Father, is what a lot of people don't see is weddings.
What? Who doesn't?
Weddings.
I go to a lot of weddings.
Well, you do, and I do.
I like to move it. He likes to move it. I love wedding dance parties, too.
Okay, well, I was talking about the Sacrament of Marriage.
Oh yeah. That's awesome.
You're as bad as all the brides and grooms out there.
What?
They just, can we just do something at the church real quick so I can have a big party? You're as bad as the rest of them.
Who says they're bad?
I think you're a bad person.
All my friends are heathens. Take it slow.
Oh man,
I'm in a good mood this week.
What's funny is so it's Lent, and so it's kind of like Lent, and we're fasting and we're praying and we're almsgiving, and so we don't necessarily always think about sort of celebratory things.
Yeah.
But what's happening under the surface, I know in your life and in mine, are dozens of couples that are preparing
for
marriage.
Love it.
And so we thought we might just maybe talk about kind of how that works.
Yeah.
Maybe give a little marital advice out there. Let's start with this. What business do you have, Father, as a celibate man, giving anyone marriage advice? Go.
Well, I've never had...
I don't think that's a good answer.
I love when someone said to me, they're like, Father, how can you give advice?
What do you know?
And I said, well, I've never had a foot amputated. And the guy was like, what? I'm sorry. I was like, well, one of my friends had his foot amputated, and he called me for advice. And there was this long pause, and I said, well, I've never had my foot amputated, so what good of advice was I to him? And he was like, oh. I said, and you've never been a celibate priest, so what advice do you give me?
Yeah, people give us advice all the time.
Father, I know you're celibate. Let me give you some advice. And I'm like, well, you've never been a celibate priest, so you can't give me any advice. Nor have I had my foot amputated like my buddy.
It's bad logic.
It's bad logic. So
I think mostly because we, as priests, number one, we grew up in families.
Yeah.
Right? So we have that experience.
And I go to families' homes.
We have brothers and sisters who are married.
Yeah.
We have friends who are married, aunts and uncles who are married.
Mm-hmm.
And then, at least as a priest, I am involved in hundreds of marriages. In the confessional, we hear about marriage.
Mm-hmm.
In counseling, we hear about marriage.
Yep.
At funerals, we hear about marriage. And then we've both spent, most of our adult lives as priests helping people prepare for marriage.
Uh-huh.
And now what's really fun, this is actually like on the other end. I've been a priest 12 years. You've been a priest?
9 this May, 29th.
And so now we see like couples that we married, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And now they're having kids, they're starting families. And so now we're getting like another, sort of side of marriage. A couple we prepared and married, and now they're, I have the couple, I did a wedding, I don't know, it was two weeks after I was ordained. And now they're, they've been married almost 12 years and have 4 children. Like
what?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Tommy and Margot Griffin, shout out.
Woohoo!
But anyway, so we're not necessarily experts on marriage. I mean, we're not. But we know a fair amount.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my number one. Can I say my number one pet peeve about weddings?
Go.
So you're thinking to yourself, oh yeah, I bet you don't like mothers of the bride. I've actually never had a problem with that.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet you don't like that the bride and groom only care about the party. That's actually also not been my experience.
Right.
I find the couples I work with, generally speaking, care deeply about the ceremony itself and making it very meaningful in scripture and all that. My number one pet peeve is when a couple gets engaged and then sort of does all the planning and then like calls the church. They've gone out of order. All right. What happens a lot of times is they say, okay, we need to get the reception place, we got the DJ, we got the caterer, and now let's call the church and make sure that date works.
Yeah.
Okay, that's no good, people. Don't do that.
Uh-huh.
Because at a church, any church, at St. Francis Xavier, which is like a nice church that a lot of people want to get married in, number one, there might be other weddings at that day. Or at that time.
Like 17 of them this year that are OSU
Yeah, there's a
students.
bunch. We got a bunch. But then there's also days when, like, we don't do weddings.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do weddings on Good Friday or Holy Saturday.
Yeah.
We typically try to avoid, weddings on, we'll do them on like a game day or something like that. But there's times when, if Christmas is on a Saturday, we're not going to do a wedding on Saturday at Christmas because there's one priest and it's not happening. So anyway, call the priest first. Get engaged, call your mom and dad, change your Facebook status, and then call the priest and figure out and get that date on the calendar before you start doing all the auxiliary stuff. Would you agree with that? Am I crazy?
I think you're...
Am I being overbearing?
You are not being overbearing. You're spot on. You're spot on.
That's wonderful.
Okay, so tell me a secret of marriage preparation with couples that you have discovered as a priest. You're like, this is really wonderful to get them to do this.
One of the first things I ask a couple when I meet with them in my office. So we get to know each other. How did you guys meet? And things like that. Because a lot of times, I think this is your experience too. Sometimes you know one of them better than the other, and so you want to make the other one feel like you want to get to know them because I do. Sometimes one of them is Catholic, one of them is not, and so they've never like met a priest. They're kind of nervous about I don't know about this Catholic thing.
Uh-huh.
One of the things I like to ask couples is, tell me about the biggest fight you've ever had. And then what I'm waiting for, I have a secondary question.
Uh-huh.
And the question is, how did you resolve it?
Yeah.
And with that question, I can tell a lot about a couple. One is, are they going to be honest with me? If they turn to each other and say, "Oh, well, we've been together for 5 years and we've never had a fight." Okay, bull. Not true. Not true. Right? You've had disagreements, right? You've had maybe not knockdown, drag out fight, but you've had disagreements. So what's the biggest one you've ever had? And then how did you get out of it? Or in some cases, maybe it's still going and has been, for a long time. But I find that to be just a nice intro to kind of get them to open up and, what's going on? How do you guys resolve the issues in your life as a couple?
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I think marriage preparation is critically important right now. Because right now, what the stat is, like 52% of marriages end in failure. And then there was that New York Times. Ever see that article from the New York Times? It was an op-ed article. It was a case study done in North Carolina in like 2010. And it was a research analyst who basically, like at the end of hanging out with her friends for a couple weeks and visiting friends, she realized all her friends were getting divorced or were divorced. And so she started looking and she's like asking questions of all her friends, and found out that 75% of people who live together before they're married, they cohabitate before they're married, get divorced in under 5 years. And so they haven't really worked out all of the kinks of it, but they know 75% of people who live together before they're married get divorced in under 5 years.
So conventional wisdom would say, and I've seen those stats. I think it was a Rutgers University study, or maybe we'll try to find it.
Yeah.
That would seem to go against conventional wisdom. So I think the wisdom of the world would say, you absolutely should live together before you're married.
Take it for a test drive. Figure out if you like each other.
Right. And now you're used to each other. You know each other better. I'm doing air quotes at this point. We're on the radio. And then when you're married, you've had all that experience, and your marriage should be better. The statistics do not bear that out.
The odds are not in your favor.
I have a priest friend who, when I don't do this, but I think it's worth saying. It's a little dramatic, but when he meets with a couple, and they come in and they're getting to know each other, and he says, "Well, tell me what your living situation is," and they say, "We're living together." He kind of shifts in his chair. He does a little kind of sits up straight, and he says, "Okay, I appreciate you sharing that. I just need you to know that now I need to treat you as a high risk couple."
They are high risk.
And he says, like, I don't know, like makes people cry and stuff. Like, whoa.
I mean, they are. Because if
true.
you get divorced, you're going to end up in therapy. Most people get some sort of counseling after therapy, or after a divorce, because it's not like, oh yeah, we just.
But why? So why would it would seem to me and most people that living together before you're married would be better for your marriage? Statistics say it's worse. Why?
I've come down to this after effect of entering into marriage. A couple who does not live together and then gets married and moves into the same house immediately has to start sacrificing.
Ooh.
And there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friend.
Somebody famous said that.
Jesus, not my buddy who's a carpenter in Tulsa. Jesus, who or not my. He's my cousin. He's not my cousin.
He's cousin Jesus.
He's my sister. My sister-in-law.
Oh.
My sister-in-law. So it's my cuñada's brother, Jesus, Chewy.
Okay, yeah.
So it's not Chewy who said that.
Jesus.
It's Jesus. Jesus said that. And so when a couple moves in together immediately after marriage, they have to start sacrificing for each other day one. Such as I asked a couple one time, and I said, "Tell me the funniest thing that you learned about your husband." And she said, "He likes to pee and talk at the same time, with the bathroom door open." And she goes, "Father, I hate every second of it, but I have to I have to make sacrifices to be able to talk to him." So, there are these moments in marriage where there's great sacrifice from day one.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to lay down your life for your friend and sacrifice for them, then you're
if you're in marriage,
you're not going to be married
if you're
to them.
in marriage for yourself, your marriage is in trouble.
And we're not willing to do, most people are not willing to do giant, huge sacrifices. They're like, that's too big. But a lot of people aren't also willing to do little bitty sacrifices. And there's some things like, you know what? She puts the spoons in the dishwasher spoon end up. And I like them spoon end down.
Yeah.
And so there's these little moments like, I'm willing to sacrifice my way of doing things for the other person.
That's how you love. That's love.
It's that just little act of love. So I always thought, if people could communicate, they can get through everything. If they could communicate, they can get through anything. And I've had to start figuring out how to make them sacrifice for each other. How are you going to start right now laying down your life for your friend? And I think that's the most critical thing in a culture that often doesn't. Chiefly.
No, we're in it for ourselves.
Yeah, it's the I generation.
Ourselves. And marriage, yeah. If you're going to get married, your marriage is, you're in it for them.
Yeah.
I heard a priest say one time, there was a talk on John Paul II's theology of the body, and he said he works with couples, and he said one of the things he says to couples is, if you're sexually active, if you're sleeping together before you're married, the only thing that really proves is that you'll sleep with someone you're not married to.
Oh, stop. Yeah, that's what it does.
So when you're married and somebody, they find someone more attractive that they want to sleep with, you kind of already know that they'll sleep with someone that they're not married to because they slept with you.
Mm-hmm. Is this a PG-13 podcast?
Woo, kids, yes. Parents, turn the volume down.
Okay, so the beauty of marriage, though, is also I like to teach couples about what marriage is. So I'll start with a gospel presentation on the book of Genesis, and I'll walk them through the days of creation.
Male and female, he created them.
And the male, he created them in his image and after his likeness. He created them this way, good. And then I'll pair that up with the Catechism, chapter 1. It says, God infinitely perfect and blessed in himself in a plan of sheer goodness, freely created man and woman to share in his own blessed life. And by means of this, I'm quoting this from my brain.
I'm looking at him right now. He is not reading this.
I usually read it upside down to the couples. And it's he calls man to seek him, to know him, and to love him with all his strength, calling all of them scattered and divided by sin into the unity of the body of his church. And so it's this beautiful, what is the human being made for? And so I try to
Love.
Weave that in with the Catechism and with Genesis. And then I talk about, that whole story, because the story of the scriptures of Genesis to the book of Revelation is a story of marriage. God marrying his people right at Genesis.
God wants to marry you.
Yeah. And then what happens when sin enters in? When the enemy shows up. Yeah, I always like to talk to them about the serpent. I think it was Scott Hahn who gave he says, the word is not serpent, it's Nashan. It's a Leviathan. And one of our professors gave us that description in Hebrew of Leviathan, and I always think of it as an orca. Remember when we watched Shark Week that time, and that orca killed that great white shark?
They made a whole show about the great white shark and the killer whale.
Yeah, like killer
Going
whales
at it.
love great white shark livers, and they hunt them down and kill them. And so,
Who doesn't?
At the book of Genesis, we're not dealing with like a little bitty snake. We're dealing with what? We're dealing with this ferocious, rational beast who wants to destroy not only the couple's relationship with each other, but the couple's relationship with God. And then the rest of the Old Testament is all about the restoration of marriage. Because anytime God speaks to his people, he says, let me tell you a story about marriage. Let me tell you the story. Hosea, he sends Hosea out and he says, Hosea, go and marry a prostitute named Gomer, and then tell Israel that you are in a relationship like this. Or even they say you prostitute yourselves with the gods
Another
on
god,
with the other gods of the other nations around you. So there's a whole story. And then what does John's gospel begin with? John's gospel.
In the beginning was the word.
Exactly. John is retweeting Genesis. He's bringing that Genesis back up, and then it goes through the next day, and on the third day, the sixth day, there was a wedding in Cana in Galilee, and Jesus was there.
John 2.
And so there's this story of this new marriage, this new wine, this new love.
Love it.
And then if you keep going in John's work, the book of the Apocalypse, what is the story of
Revelation is...
It ends with this bride. So the whole story of the scriptures from Genesis to the book of Revelation is a story of a marriage. And so this is the beauty that this couple is stepping.
You get to participate in that.
Yes.
As a married couple, as man and woman.
It's not just about following all these rules and laws. It's like, how am I living out this divine marriage? How am I letting heaven and the Holy Trinity come and dwell in my life? As a married couple, how am I protecting heaven in her? As a married couple, how am I protecting heaven in him? How am I keeping this family on the path to the kingdom of God in virtue, the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and in sacrifice?
Woo!
I said, check, baby,
You should be a priest.
I am one.
That's amazing. That's awesome. That's
so
awesome.
I do.
So
that
what do you
with
do? Sort of practically speaking, and I guess one of the reasons this was on our minds is because we have coming up. One of the things we do, kind of, I think, special in Stillwater, partly because we work well together, and so we get with some couples here in town.
Yeah.
Some wonderful Catholic couples who are themselves, happily married and are also good teachers, easily relatable.
Yeah.
And we bring together at their house, at the couple's house, these couples who have been married for a little while, have families, and these couples that are engaged that you and I are working with. And so we have that coming up.
Yeah.
Which is going to be super fun.
And I always ask, are you sure you want 40 college students in your house?
Yeah.
And they say, yes. Are you sure you want 40 college students?
Where are we all going to park?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. So we did one in the fall, right? When was that? Was that? In the fall? Yeah. It was in the fall. And now we're doing one again. So we're going to do this a couple times a year. But it's kind of a local marriage prep.
Marriage retreat. What? And it's twice a year. We do it in the spring and we do it in the fall. And we talk about human sexuality, communication, and love. And then how to relate with your children, how to talk to your children in the right way. It was a couple of years ago, I think the first time we did this, one of the kids who was 2 at the time, and now he's 4, comes down and is crying. And his dad just picks him up and puts him in there and just starts rocking him.
And keeps talking.
And just keeps talking and doesn't break a moment.
Beautiful.
And I'm like, what? And the dudes afterwards, the guys were like, Father,
I didn't hear anything he said, but that was awesome.
Yeah, and that's where we want them to learn.
Yeah. So I think something that you and I, as priests, take very seriously as a ministry. There's a lot going on. We're pulled in a lot of directions, but I think we both make it a real priority for our people here in Stillwater to see that they're, as prepared as possible. I think the best, probably, ideally, the best marriage preparation that a man or woman gets is in their own family.
Yeah.
Oftentimes that's not the case. One of the things I do with couples is really kind of identify what in the family you grew up in, what do you want to bring to the marriage, and in the family you grew up in, what's staying out. So someone will say, "Oh, my mom and dad, like they were so like loving to each other, but like, well, man, when they fought, like I did not like the way they fought." Okay, so let's not bring that.
Yeah.
I didn't like the way they raised us, as disciplined us, or
I didn't like a TV in the house. They just sat and watched TV all day.
Yeah.
Two things I do with couples is, one, I try to discover how their parents solved arguments.
Yes.
And the second one I try to do in the communication section is when is your best time to have a conversation?
Yes. Brilliant.
Because if yours is in the morning and yours is at the evening, and you're talking in the morning and you're talking in the evening, you're just like passing by each other. It's like, okay, and just how to use proper vocabulary and distinguishing words. And so if you don't understand what the other person say, ask them to clarify.
Yeah, when you say stuff like you always you always talk down to me. Okay. No, I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but always. That's.
And another thing I try to teach them
provocative.
is don't say I'm sorry. You have to say please forgive me. You have to say please forgive me, and then fill in the blank. And the other person responds, I forgive you, and they have to say the same thing that you said. And because people will say, "Hey Brian, I'm sorry for spitting in your milk the other day." It's okay, Kerry. It happens just like that. I didn't spit in your milk.
It's okay. I poured the milk on your bed.
I forgive you.
Yeah, Pope Francis, he once said the five words that will save your marriage are "I love you" and "I'm sorry." Yeah. But you're saying don't say "I'm sorry."
I'm not saying that. I love you.
Why do you hate
Please
Pope
forgive
Francis?
me. I don't hate Pope Francis.
Okay, good.
I love you. Please forgive me. 7.
I love you. Oh yeah, that okay. 7.
7. It's
words, yeah.
7. I mean, that's Sabbath.
Like the 7 last words of Jesus. Wow.
I love you. Please
so
forgive
if
me.
you would, all you listeners out there, wherever you are, let me make 2 requests. One, would you pray for our retreat that we have coming up with our couples here in Stillwater? It's going to be awesome. We're really looking forward to it. It's something we are looking forward to. And then I would just say wherever you are, especially if you're here in Payne County, that do what you can where you are to build up marriages in your own marriage, that you're taking care of your own marriage if you're married. If you're preparing for marriage, if you're younger, single, OSU student maybe, are you praying for your future spouse? If you're called to the vocation of marriage, start now. It's not like, oh, well, as soon as I meet someone, I'll stop sleeping around and getting drunk all the time. No, stop sleeping around and getting drunk now.
When did you stop praying for your future vocation, your wife?
I never really heard that, like as a kid.
I never did either. People like, but what if you were praying for? I didn't. Yeah. But what if you were?
That was not part of my upbringing. I didn't
write a letter to my future wife and then burn them on ordination day.
My favorite thing about the day before I was ordained a deacon was I gave away all my tithes.
Yeah,
that was awesome. That was so
incredible.
And I've never worn a tie since, and never will ever again. But anyway, pray for strong marriages. We need it, right?
Yes,
but then also think about what Father Kerry said about the kind of those biblical images of marriage. There's a lot there.
Beautiful.
And if that's, if you want to know more about that, I'm going to give out Father Kerry's cell phone number. And I want you to call him at all hours of the night and ask him questions. Oh, we were out of time? Okay, never mind. I'll give you his number next time.
Oh, please. I won't
Thanks
forget.
for listening to Pastors of Payne. Check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the St. Francis Xavier SoundCloud account. You can listen to us on P94.3, AM 780, and the Oklahoma Catholic Broadcasting Network on Wednesdays at 3:30. God bless you.
Peace.